The inaugural ball is underway, capping off an historic day for New Jersey and its 50th governor.
And for the first woman to be governor of New Jersey. Good evening. I'm Steve Highsmith.
And I'm Kent Manahan. We are going to be going live to the inaugural ball and also recapping the events of Inauguration Day 1994 during the next hour.
We'll be checking in, see how things are going at the ball in Edison, and we're also going to be joined by historian Howard Green, who's in our studio with us now.
A standing room only crowd.
Of about 2,000 people or so packed the Trenton War Memorial Building today for the high noon ceremony of sorts. That's where Christa Whitman took the oath of office, the Trenton War Memorial. She was sworn in by Chief Justice Robert Willings.
I, Christine Todd Whitman,
do solemnly swear
that
I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform the duties
of
the Governor of the State of New Jersey according to the best of my ability. So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
A crystalline moment, one not to be forgotten and one that won't be worn down by time. Maybe through any kind of adverse political reasons, but probably not. Overall, a poignant moment and a very personal and political triumph for Christa Whitman.
Certainly was. And to talk about her inaugural address, if we could briefly today as the first woman governor of New Jersey, certainly a straightforward address, one that was very firm in the tone that she took, and I think really to strike a tone for the way she plans to go after these beginning days in her new administration. And she has to be straightforward and get right to the point because of the great challenges that face her, in particular with her 10% promised tax cut, and now she says she wants to deliver 5% of that, retroactive to January 1st of 1994, in a surprise move somewhat today as she addressed the people in her inaugural speech. And of course, we are joined here this evening by Howard Green of the New Jersey Historical Commission. Howard, your thoughts as you heard live this afternoon Mrs. Whitman's inaugural address and look back over past addresses of note in New Jersey.
Well, I was reminded as I listened to it of a famous comment by the German sociologist Max Weber, who once wrote that the job of a politician is to speak with passion, to lead with passion. And I thought there was a certain amount of real basic enthusiasm on her part, and there was a clear, crisp, concise speech. It may have had a surprise about how the tax cut was going to be structured, but there were no ringing new issues. There was the themes she campaigned on were the themes in the speech.
This was Christa Whitman's style at its best, really, because this is the way she has conducted herself, at least for the latter part of the campaign and during the transition period.
That's what I think. I mean, I'm not an expert on the political science of governorships, but it seems to me that what we saw was her style, and until the adversity really puts the squeeze on, I think it's what we're, if it does, it's what we're going to see from her.
So simple and direct and plain talk.
Absolutely,
it's a different kind of passion, perhaps, if the times call for that sort of thing.
I think that's what you're saying is that the times. One can question it, and I'm sure if we had partisans from various sides here, they would. It's a speech which says the times call for cutting taxes back, continuing to deliver essential services in the most efficient manner possible, getting more for less. We wish her well. It's not easy to get more for less. On some levels,
I guess you really, though, when you look at it, if the times call for it, it's kind of hard to argue with saying to people, "I'm going to give you money," or give it back to you,
and not take away any of the services that government delivers at the same time in basic ways.
And heaven forbid if you don't do what you say you're going to do when you're talking about giving people back
That was
money.
A fascinating line in her speech when she talked about promises. She said, "I will keep my promises," in essence, and she said, "So help me God, I will do that." That is very, very much different from most of the people who have ever been elected to office and are sworn in and give their inaugural speeches. Certainly different from the previous governor, who actually had that line in his speech and took it out.
Well,
at the
she
last
said
minute.
that this was going to be a different style of government, her style of government, and these would be very different times in New Jersey.
I want to ask you something, though, Howard, about this day and where these things can fall apart, looking back in history. This is a day of high hope, sprinkled a little bit with skepticism that's usually brought on by the disappointments of the past. There are a lot of high hopes these days and past governors, some of them who've had the same legislative party to help them along, and yet things have disintegrated.
Well, when one of the big questions is, and it's at the heart of what Mrs. Whitman is arguing, how much does a governor and does a state government's policies affect an economic climate, and how much does it have to do with much bigger things? The first thing that will work for her or against her is a business cycle that is probably a lot bigger than her policies.
So much of it is out of her control.
I think so. I mean, I think that varies, but I think some of it is out of her control.
As it was out of Florida's control.
As it was out, the changing manufacturing base of the state. Yes, she can do things that may keep manufacturing in New Jersey as opposed to in Connecticut or New York, but she probably can't do much to reverse a long-term secular trend. If the United States is reducing the amount of manufacturing it does, the amount of manufacturing as part of the economy, there's not much she can do. She can't compete with Indonesia or Thailand or Korea.
Well, Howard, from a historical perspective, what is best then for a governor to choose to do in the first year, perhaps, of a four-year term? Do you go after several difficult issues, or do you choose one or two and try to conquer those battles and bring forth issues out of that?
The first thing you have to think about, it seems to me, is a certain coalition elected you. Do you hope that you pin your re-election hopes on the same coalition, or are you going to in effect reorganize it? So it isn't a question of whether it's one, two, or several. It's a question of which groups and which issues do you go after. She's picking a kind of, let me call it, middle-class populism, tax cuts, and I think she'll need to deliver on that. And that might just be enough to ensure re-election if she can do it.
All right. Well, we're going to take a look at some of the festivities that, as they happened today. It did rain on the Whitman Parade. That was canceled due to weather conditions. The freezing conditions, though, did not dampen the spirit of the rest of the day's ceremonies. For Christy Whitman, the day began with a church service at Trinity Cathedral in Trenton.
There's a message in the wire, there's a whistle in the wind spread across the USA. Bless this brand new day.
While the big chill was felt on the outside, Christy Whitman and her family took part in the warmth of the Trinity Cathedral for an interfaith prayer service. From there, it was a quick stop at the State House, her last visit as a private citizen. The ceremonial walk to the War Memorial Building was canceled. It was drive time instead. Meanwhile, the crowd was forming in anticipation of the historic swearing-in. Among the invitees, former governors Bill Cahill, Brendan Byrne, Tom Kean, and the soon-to-be former governor Jim Florio. The New Jersey Symphony played.
And there was singing by the New Hope Baptist Choir of Newark. The traditional 19-gun salute sounded, howitzers shaking the site in honor of the new chief of state. And the governor was presented with the Great Seal of the state of New Jersey.
I accept this seal as evidence of the public trust and pledge to honor.
There was even a throwback to colonial times as Whitman was introduced to the Senate president.
It is my pleasure, Your Excellency, to introduce you to the Honorable Donald D. Francisco, President of the New Jersey Senate.
But when it came down to it, the official introduction of Christy Whitman was very contemporary.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Governor of the State of New Jersey.
We are going to take a short break in our coverage of Inaugural 94, and we'll be back shortly.
But first, a look at one of New Jersey's former governors, courtesy of producer Maureen Duffy and editor Bob Herman.
Governor Whitman is the first woman to govern the state, but not the first to wear a dress. Meet Edward Hyde, cousin of Queen Anne of England. The Queen's governing style affected Hyde down to his style of dress. Spending beyond his means, Hyde was kicked out of office and thrown into jail. After paying his debt with his inheritance, he went back to England. Edward Hyde governed from 1703 to 1708. William Franklin was the last royal governor of New Jersey. The illegitimate son of Benjamin Franklin, he developed a solid reputation as chief executive and enjoyed great popularity until the outbreak of the Revolution. Unable to break his ties from the crown, Franklin was removed from his post, but continued being a loyalist. He sailed back to England, never to reconcile a father-son relationship severed by war. William Franklin governed from 1763 to 1776.
And at least political lineage now that leads us to Christy Whitman, the 50th governor of the state of New Jersey. I'm Steve Highsmith, along with Kent Manahan, Howard Green, and the Jersey Historical Commission, as we, in the next few minutes, not only talk about the inaugural ball, which is getting underway in Edison, but also recap today's events and try to interpret them and put them in some sort of historical perspective.
And Howard Green, as you join us this evening, they say that Tom Kean was New Jersey's most popular governor. New Jersey's most famous governor, perhaps, Woodrow Wilson, although he didn't spend much time at the State House or in office per se in an official way. He was running for president a great deal of the time.
I think there's no question he's the most famous previous New Jersey governor. There are a lot of stories about Wilson. For example, he had never been in the State House until the day of his inauguration. It's a matter of dispute about whether he ran for governor as a stepping stone to the presidency or decided to run for the presidency once in the governorship. Probably it was the former, that it was a plan that they'd had in place for a while. Nonetheless, Wilson's early period in New Jersey was an extraordinary record of legislative reform, probably unmatched since. Though it got rolled back by people from the two successive governors actually undid almost all of the Wilsonian program. In fact, one of the people, Walter Edge, who followed Wilson, I think there was one governor between Wilson and Edge, sounded a little bit like Mrs. Whitman in the sense that he ran for office as a, quote, businessman with a businessman's plan for state government, suggesting that the Wilsonian reforms had made the business climate inhospitable, and he wanted to roll some of that back, sounding not unlike what Mrs. Whitman is suggesting needs to be done in order to make the state a more favorable environment for corporations and businesses.
Stepping out of the past to the present, with scenes now of the inaugural ball tonight in Edison at the Raritan Exhibition Center, where thousands of people will
About
gather
4,000.
to pay tribute to the new governor.
And they held it down. It's 4,000 sounds like a lot, and it is, but they held it down to make sure that the people could be comfortable there and also be in the same room with the new governor. There were some complaints 4 years ago that they had too many people and too many rooms and not enough service.
Everyone decked out and bedazzled there, as we see in the various shots, and people still filing in to the exhibition center in Edison, chosen because it was central New Jersey, perhaps appreciated on a night like tonight when we all know about the driving conditions getting along Route 1 this evening. We're told have been very difficult, so there may be some late arrivers. But Mrs. Whitman, we are told, scheduled to be there shortly. So apparently her entourage will make it pretty much on time. She was said to arrive around 8 o'clock this evening, so that should put her there sometime.
Yeah, these kind of events are about as colorful as a lot of our governors get, and yet when you look back in the past, some of the governors like Edward Hyde perhaps or others, Howard, let's say today they probably wouldn't even be elected dog catcher.
Well, nobody elected the colonial governors, and the governors from 1776 until 1844 were chosen, selected, you might call it elected by the legislature. We didn't begin electing our governors directly until 1844. So we really only have a 150-year history of that.
So the only test some of these early ones had to go through was just their connections.
Party, or a sense, in the case of the early governors, they probably they were either a friend of the king or queen who appointed them or of the proprietors. They had to have some administrative ability, or it would have seemed, although Cornbury, for example, the person whose picture in the dress was on screen before, was a disastrous administrator. He was brought in to try to bring some administrative regularity to a chaotic colony, and was just a miserable failure at it. There are also some questions, I'm sorry, this may have been what you were going to ask me, there are also some questions about the dress. For a long time it was just assumed that he wanted to show how much he admired his cousin, the Queen Anne, and so he liked to dress in her clothes. Recently a historian has suggested that idea wasn't really said in writing anyway until roughly 75 years after Cornbury was on the scene, and it may really have been an elaborate political satire.
Yeah, I like my dog, but I don't wear a collar. You know?
The painting, in any event, is a wonderful painting. It's on display, or it was anyway, at the New York Historical Society in a stairwell. It's life-sized. The dress is blue, if I'm not mistaken, and it's really worth seeing.
So there was really a great deal of change, obviously, over the years that has come about in the power of the office of the governor of the state of New Jersey. When was the most significant change that brought about that power as we know it today?
Well, there were 3 or 4 different periods of change. Actually, the most powerful governors were probably the colonial governors. However, and there were 2 or 3 different forms in which colonial governor serves, but
and if the king didn't find out what was going on, they didn't have to worry about it.
King or queen or any one of a number of boards, but mostly it was the investors who suffered if the affairs of the colony weren't in order. In 1776, under the threat of imminent attack by the British, a constitution was drafted in haste, and it established a very weak governor who served for 1 year at a time, elected by the legislature. And mostly the governors of that period came from the first families of the state, and their main purpose was to help the citizens not feel mistrustful of government. Many of those men, William Livingston notably, and some others, William Patterson, did make great things out of a weak office. Then in 1844, the Constitution was revised, allowing a governor to serve for 3 years but not to succeed himself. A veto that could be overridden by a simple majority of both houses was provided, and some administrative appointments. So the office was strengthened, but it really wasn't made the powerhouse that it is today. That happened in 1947 when the current constitution under which the state operates was written. It was brought into being by a movement largely of Republicans called the Clean Government Movement, who were responding to the control of the urban bosses of the day, most notably Mayor Frank Hague. There's a wonderful story about Hague and Governor Charles Edison, who served as governor, I think, from 1940 to 43, the son of the famous inventor, and a man who was part of this Constitution movement. Hague, trying to get Edison sort of off stage, felt he could make him a United States Senator, and offered him the senatorial job if he could arrange it, and Edison turned him down. Edison, hard of hearing impaired, I should say, prompted this response from Hague, if the story can be believed. That deaf little son of a bitch only hears what he wants to hear. So.
Well, they still say that about politicians today.
Well, you know,
so
I was reminded of that in Mrs. Whitman's speech when she talked about listening. I think she does listen. I think was a successful part of the campaign. I think she's very good one-on-one with people. And it remains to be seen. It's often a problem with politicians that they only hear what they want to hear. And we'll see whether her hearing is selective or inclusive. The jury is still out on that.
You know, Howard, you said something very interesting there, especially at the end about listening. When we were looking at the campaign in its final weeks, we noticed at the Trenton Commons, where a lot of people eat lunch, there was Christy Whitman, and she would go table by table to meet with people, And occasionally, of course, she would run into people who said, well, I'm not voting for you, I'm voting for Jim Florio. Instead of saying, well, thanks for considering me and moving on, she stayed with him and she talked for a long time with him. Not to the point of being able to say that at the end of the 4-minute conversation she turned them around, but nonetheless, she did stay with him. And that kind of impression, I think, was left on a lot of voters. Whether or not a governor who is by nature somewhat removed, obviously, from the campaign can continue that is a question.
I know we have a guest, but
Yes,
I think that's going to be carried out really in the sense that she has continued her town meetings and her one-on-one with the people of New Jersey on radio and television, and perhaps a future tour on the bus, which was so successful in the campaign.
Get over to Edison if we can, because we have someone who's been waiting very patiently to talk with us, Peter Verniero, who is counsel to now Governor Christie Whitman. Mr. Verniero joins us from the inaugural ball. Thank you for joining us, Peter.
Thank you, Steve.
That's good. How's your day been going?
It's been a busy day, but it's been an exciting day. We were up early in the morning at the church service in Trenton to celebrate in prayer the governor-elect's new term, and that was very exciting. And then, of course, there was the ceremony, the inaugural address, and now we're here at the ball. So
is the governor there yet?
She is just arriving, yes.
All right. How is she feeling right now? How enthusiastic is she?
She is very enthusiastic. I spoke to her about 7 o'clock this morning before she left to start the day. She was excited, she was confident, she was looking forward to it, and I've seen that all throughout the day.
Has there been any talk, Mr. Verniero, about your role as counsel? Will it be different? How close of an advisor will you be?
I'm sorry, Steve, I didn't hear that.
How close of an advisor do you expect to be in the months and years ahead, perhaps, to the governor? Is your role pretty much going to be the traditional role of counsel, or perhaps a little bit more so?
Well, I think the role of counsel will be the traditional role that you have seen. I will be the legislative liaison to the new governor. I will review executive orders and prepare those for her review and signature. I will also be processing judicial and prosecutorial appointments. So it is the traditional role that I bring. I've also represented Mrs. Whitman as an attorney, so I have that added dimension, if you will, that background that I consider very special.
So I take it that you reviewed the Economic Master Plan executive order today?
Yes, I did.
Tell us what that'll do.
I think the Economic Master Plan will be very good for the state. It will be the first time that we will have a comprehensive look at the economy, at statutes and regulations that impact on the economy as a tool to the new governor. And that's really what it is. It's to give the governor a strategic blueprint for the future to rely on as she goes forward with matters affecting the economy, which, as you know, is the core issue in the campaign.
When do you expect that commission to actually start coming forth with its recommendations and opinions?
Well, we've asked that the commission complete its work by October of '94. That's in the executive order.
Now, this order that was signed today during the inaugural speech, is that precedent-setting, or has that been done before?
I don't know. I haven't researched it as a matter of history. Certainly in recent history, I can't recall any incumbent governor signing an executive order as part of the inaugural address. Frankly, that was done by design to underscore the importance of the economy as a critical issue, as an important subject matter to the new governor and to the people of the state of New Jersey.
Do you expect that Governor Whitman will somehow test the bounds of the power of the use of executive order, or will he somewhat fall in line with past governors?
That's difficult to say. I mean, certainly she will use that authority prudently and reasonably as she goes forward. I don't want to predict whether she will go beyond what her predecessors have done or not. It's too early to tell on that.
Mr. Verniero, thank you very much for joining us. Have a good night tonight, and again, good luck in the next several years.
Thank you, Steve.
Peter Verniero, who is counsel now to Governor Christie Whitman.
Well, as Peter said, the governor herself is about to arrive or has possibly walked in the door in the meantime while we were conversing. Governor Whitman, of course, caught some people by surprise today with her inaugural speech. Aside from pledging to keep her tax cut promise, the governor had a few specifics to pass along,
including the retroactive tax cut of 5% to provoke some spirited applause. We're going to show you the entire speech now, the inaugural address, the first address by the new governor, Christie Whitman.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chief Justice, Governor Florio, Mr. Speaker, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is with an eagerness to tackle the challenges ahead that I take the oath of office as New Jersey's 50th Chief Executive and its first woman governor. On behalf of the people of the state of New Jersey, I would like to thank Governor Florio for his years of public service. We have agreed on some issues, disagreed on others, but no one has ever doubted that you cared deeply. Some say it is a proud moment to be sworn into such a high office as governor. For me, however, this is also a humbling moment. No one reaches this position alone. Certainly I didn't, and I want to thank all of you who made it possible. I especially want to thank my husband, John, and my two children, Kate and Taylor, for standing by me during a long and tough campaign. Today's inauguration marks not a victory of partisanship, but a test of our democracy, of our ability to govern ourselves. As a people, we face a crisis of confidence. Many have lost faith in the ability of government to deliver services efficiently, to lend a helping hand when needed, and to get out of the way when it is not. We worry about the ability of our economy to generate jobs and restore prosperity. We question the ability of our schools to deliver the quality education our children deserve at a price their parents can afford. We question the ability of our criminal justice system to prevent crime and to deliver justice and safety. Americans have lost faith in institutions that are the foundations of our democracy. They question those they have elected to serve them. Wherever I go, whether I'm at a shopping mall, attending a Devils or a Nets game, taking questions on a call-in show, I hear the same implicit question. After the oaths, after the speeches and the parties and festivities, will you remember your promises and will you keep them? As the first statement of my governorship, to every voter in New Jersey, let me answer that question. I have just taken the oath of this office you have entrusted to me. To me, this oath means one thing. I will not hedge. I will not backtrack. I will keep my promises to you, my friends, to the best of my ability. So help me God. But I can't do it alone. I need your help, your wisdom, and your support. If government is to be for the people, it must be of and by the people. For democracy to work, as Abraham Lincoln said in his first inaugural speech, we in government must have a patient confidence in the ultimate justice of the people. Government must trust and listen to the people, or it is not a democracy. That is why I've spent the last 4 years listening to you, and it is why I will keep listening for as long as I am your governor. I believe in the people of this state. I believe in open government. I believe that the best decisions are based on consensus. And like you, I believe deeply in the fundamental need for change. To those who question whether I'm serious about bucking the special interests who hold so much quiet power in this city, let me be clear. I did not run for governor to conduct business as usual. It is going to be different around here. The only way government can win back your trust is to earn it. Our principal problems are not the product of great economic shifts or other vast, unforeseen forces. They are the creation of government. of government that puts special interests ahead of the people's interests, of government that refuses to change. You know it, I know it, and this time, together, we're going to fix it. New Jersey should lead the nation. In a world driven by ideas and technology, we boast some of the world's leading telecommunications, pharmaceutical, chemical, and other high-tech firms. We have first-class universities, great ports, and a prime location between America's financial and political seats of power. We have great natural resources, from the highlands to the shore. New Jersey should be the engine of economic growth that leads this nation into the 21st century. It should be a powerful engine of prosperity that gives our children the same opportunity that our parents worked so hard to give us, the chance for a better life. Together, we will unshackle that economic engine from the restraining chains of high taxes. 4 months ago, I said I would put $1.4 billion of your tax dollars back in your pocket by cutting taxes over the next 3 years, with the first cut coming in July. The skeptics groaned, but here we are. And I say, why wait until the next fiscal year starts in July? Between now and then, families have car payments and credit card bills that will come due. Senior citizens on fixed income will be struggling to make ends meet. And businesses have payrolls to make. Their plans to create new jobs are sitting on shelves waiting for a stronger economy. Let's not keep economic growth waiting another minute. If President Clinton and his Congress can reach backward into time and raise your taxes retroactively, your governor and your legislature can cut them retroactively. That is why I will be asking my partners in the legislature, Senate President Donald G. Francesco and Assembly Speaker Chuck Hytaian, to enact a 5% income tax cut for every family in New Jersey, effective January 1, 1994, 18 days ago. Secondly, I am asking the legislature to eliminate all taxes on those earning less than $7,500, again, retroactively to January 1st. Those who are struggling the hardest need a tax cut the most. Third, I'm asking the legislature to cut the corporate business tax to 9%, again effective January 1st of this year. We will be competitive. No more losing our employers or to job raids by low-tax states. New Jersey is open for business. Crafting a budget that covers not only the cost of these tax cuts, but also makes up more than $1 billion in previous one-shot revenues will not be easy. We must do so without cutting the state services, which so many of us depend. We must do so without driving up the property tax. The shell game of raising one tax to cut another is over. My budget task force and the 350 citizens who served on my transition teams have been poring over every department's budget. My cabinet officials take office with a mandate to find ways to provide the same or better services for less. Hundreds of citizens have been writing in with their ideas on how we can save 5 cents on every tax dollar that we spend. Let me tell you, Once we put our minds to it, it's amazing all the ways you can find to save money. Take just 3 areas. A vast amount of uncollected bad driver surcharges are owed to the state, yet no attempt has been made to collect them. We're owed unclaimed federal Medicaid funds for health care services provided to poor children by their schools. And even an inmate from Rolway State Prison wrote into the Our Tax Dollar program to point out that more than $160 million in fines owed by criminals have never been collected. Together, these 3 areas alone offer the potential for closing the budget gap by several hundred millions of dollars. What's more, almost $200 million has been left unspent in each of the last 2 budgets because programs were overfunded. I am directing my cabinet to try to save at least that much from current year accounts. Budget cuts are just part of the equation. To cut taxes in each of the next 3 fiscal years will require sustained economic growth. Economic growth doesn't just happen. We have to plan for it, encourage it, and court it. That is why I have directed my Secretary of State to serve as an advocate for business. And it's why the first executive order of my administration, which I will sign in front of you today, creates the New Jersey Economic Master Plan Commission. This commission will develop the long-term strategy we need to make New Jersey the economic powerhouse it deserves to be. Done. Make no mistake about it, we are in a battle for jobs with Pennsylvania, the Carolinas, and the Sun Belt every single day. One of the main reasons we've been losing that battle is state government. We must cut through the needless overregulation that drives businesses out of New Jersey and discourages new firms from locating here. We can protect the environment without taking years to process a permit. Our businesses deserve better, and you deserve better. It isn't just a question of money being wasted. It's a question of duplication, inept planning, and inadequate services. We have 68 Departments of Labor field offices. Yet in some counties, we require unemployed workers to sign up for unemployment benefits in one office, then drive 10 miles to another office to find out what jobs are available. Look at how the state regulates cemeteries. If you are buried only with members of your own religion, your corpse is regulated by the Attorney General's office. But if you're buried in a non-sectarian cemetery, the Department of Banking has jurisdiction over your remains. That's right, banking. Do we really need 2 different state agencies to regulate the dead? From cradle to grave, our state government needs reform. We must reinvent government the way American corporations have been reinventing themselves to survive in the 1990s. You elected me as a chief executive officer of a $15 billion service corporation with 60,000 employees, and that's what we're going to provide: service, efficient, cost-effective service. After all, we work for you. And of all the tasks we are entrusted to perform as your government, nothing is more sacred than our responsibility to educate your children. The school system we have today was developed in the 19th century to prepare the children of farmers and new immigrants for an industrial revolution that wanted bodies for repetitive factory work. The world has changed, and our education system must change with it. Employers today require a highly educated workforce that knows how to think and how to be creative. The state that can provide the best educated workers is a state that will be the powerhouse of the 21st century. The states that fail will fall behind. We must make New Jersey number 1. We, parents, teachers, students, administrators, government leaders, and business executives must work together to reinvent education. We must make it our top priority to teach our children, all our children, to read in kindergarten and first grade and second grade when they're enthusiastic about learning. That way, we will not have to spend tens of millions of dollars in junior high school, and college trying to rectify the failures of the past. We are going to inject competition and encourage innovation by developing alternatives like magnet schools and charter schools within our public school systems to give parents a choice of where to send their children. Schools should compete for the chance to teach our children. They are our greatest treasure. If we are going to teach democracy in our schools, we should practice democracy in our school systems. In Jersey City, 5 long years of state control have not fixed schools that continue to do far too little. We should give Mayor Brett Schundler the green light to test school vouchers and invite, thank you, Mayor, and invite the top school experts in the nation to measure the results. We will get politics out of the Department of Education by giving the Education Commissioner an independent 5-year term. We will push authority down to the local level because I trust parents who love their children to get involved in school boards and PTAs. The state can give you better schools, but you must be responsible for raising your children. We will develop a strong core curriculum that teaches every student the basics of reading, writing, arithmetic, and respect for our nation's heritage. We will make our schools safe, and we will demand discipline in our classrooms. The last thing children should learn about in school is violence and fear. Personal safety is a sacred right in America. Our children, our parents, all of us deserve to live in peace. Yet far too many of us are imprisoned by fear of crime. Some say we should turn our heads, give up, and just accept a violent, crime-ridden society. Some say crime is too tough a problem to solve. My answer to them, we're tougher. We know that a small percentage of hardened criminals commit most of the violent crime. It's time to make every criminal know that he or she will serve 70% of the court sentence. For three-time violent offenders, those who make a career out of crime, it should be 3 strikes and you're in for life. We also need to set up boot camps and other alternatives to teach young people who are toying with the criminal life that they want to go straight instead. Everybody deserves a second chance, but not a third. Criminals are not the victims of society. Society is the victim of criminals. The way to make our streets safe again is to make sure criminals know they will pay surely, and perhaps permanently, for their crimes, and we will. Our blueprint to make New Jersey first is an agenda of economic growth, good schools, and safe streets, an agenda of hope, optimism, and determination, of government that is for the people because it is of and by the people. The hope, the vision, the strength of our people is our guarantee of success. And what remarkable people make up this state. In the factories of Patterson and the research laboratories of Princeton, in the ethnic neighborhoods of Perth Amboy and the senior citizen villages of Lakewood, in the towns of the shores and the Pinelands, and in the cities like Camden and Newark, all across our state, I have come to know so many of New Jersey's people. We are one family, one community, one state. There is a phrase in Spanish that means all that. Somos un solo pueblo. When one of us is out of work, homeless, cannot read, is a victim of violent crime, we all suffer. And when we help one another succeed, we all succeed. I remember a young writer who I think must have learned about America as a student in New Jersey. Over 6 decades ago, he wrote of a sense of overwhelming gratitude and gladness that America was there, that in the heart of the people the old generosities and devotions fought on, indomitable and undefeated. The best of America, F. Scott Fitzgerald concluded, is the best of the world. And I can tell you that the best of New Jersey is the best of America. In the people, we will place our faith. On trust in the people, we will build our agenda of opportunity and growth. This is our state, it is our time, and this is our future. Last week, I met the children from Mrs. Riley's 2nd grade class at the Gables School in Neptune. Each child brought along a letter for me. We should all learn to share and be nice to each other, Claudia Greer wrote. I know that you have a demanding job ahead of you, and I will be there to help you. Claudia is here today, and Claudia, I thank you for offering to help. It will take everyone's help to meet the challenge ahead. It won't always be easy, and we won't always agree, but we must not fear change. In 1776, this state was at the forefront of a revolution. We are there again today. Let's show the world what New Jersey can do. Together, we will make New Jersey first. Thank you very much.
New Jersey's new governor, Christy Whitman, the 50th governor of our state, the first woman governor of New Jersey. Certainly someone who comes from a line of well-connected GOP party people in this state. Her parents, Webster and Eleanor Todd, highly placed officials in the Democratic Party, one on the national level, one on the state level. Her brother.
And the first gentleman's grandfather was governor of New York, so and he's probably not going to be the kind of first gentleman that Lucinda was in terms of being first lady. He's got his own business he's going to do and move on like that, but a firm, simple, and direct speech, which is, by those who are on the Whitman side of the fence, exactly what they wanted to hear, especially when it comes to talking about taxes. I think we can put to rest one rumor, though. When the cannon fired the 19-gun salute, Ed Rollins was not strapped to any of the cannon.
Right. I just want to add Dan Todd also served as an assemblyman in New Jersey's legislature. Well, we are going to take you now back to the scene of tonight's festivities, the inaugural festival, the inaugural dance, if you will, the inaugural party, where Michael Aron is standing by in Edison, live with our coverage. Michael, you have been to a few of these parties before. How's this one?
This one's huge, Ken. I really can't tell you how. There's a sea of people here. It took me a long time. It took a long time to get here from Trenton, and then it took a long time to get to this position, just walking past table after table, several football fields long. I heard you talking about the first spouse a moment ago. The MC here just said something about Governor and Mrs. Whitman, and then he had to correct himself and say Governor and Mr. Whitman. Joining me is someone very close to both Whitmans, Hazel Gluck, who was co-chair of the campaign, is co-chair of the Whitman transition. I guess there is no more transition. Hazel, what did you like most about today?
Boy, that's hard to describe. I don't know if I could. The church service this morning was just magnificent. I liked, of course, the moment she was sworn was a wonderful moment for all of us. I thought her speech was terrific, and then to see Lana Hooks and Debbie Porras sworn the same day, I don't know, it was just like going from one high to another.
The tax cut, the stepped up immediate retroactive tax cut, took us all by surprise. When did you first hear about this?
I heard about 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. How did you keep, or how did the Whitman camp keep a lid on something like that they've known for 2 weeks. That's the sort of thing that normally leaks out.
It's wonderful, isn't it? We got away with it this time.
Maybe that means you're going to seal information off from...
well, when you're in the process of making a decision, when you finally made it, I mean, what's the point? The point was to get up there today. Christie very much wanted to do this. There was some debate about whether or not some people thought she should, some people thought she shouldn't. Once it was decided, it was over. She very much wanted to do this. She thought it was important to be specific in the inaugural. You know, usually inaugural is a broad brush, a vision. Nothing wrong with that, but she wanted to be a little bit more specific than that, so.
I'll bet that when the treasurer found $288 million last week in new revenues, that helped convince her to do that. Is that right?
She decided to do it before then. She knew she could do it. I mean, the budget committee's been meeting now for quite some time, so, you know, she has a good feel for what's going on.
Her rhetoric today was interesting. She spoke in very plain language, and yet a lot of what she talked about had a sort of radical tinge to it. She wants fundamental change, no more business as usual. And one of the things she talked about was limiting the role of special interests in Trenton politics. How do you do that short of changing all the campaign finance laws, or is that what she's aiming for? How do you do that?
Well, I think you do it by making people understand that it's no longer just the art of the deal. As Mr. Trump wrote in his book, I think that you do that by putting the public interest before the special interest, and I think she means to do exactly that. And I don't think it matters who the special interest is.
Is her cabinet somehow reflective of that, in that they are not part of the West State Street crowd by and large?
Partially, but the cabinet is reflective of the best that she could find in the given fields of their endeavor. I mean, you got to remember something. Christie Whitman didn't owe a lot of things to a lot of people, which is wonderful in some ways. I mean, it left her free to do what she needed to do and wanted to do. And the reason why I say she didn't owe a lot of things to a lot of people, I mean, you were there during the course of the campaign. A lot of people stayed sort of laid back. Some people were there during the good times and then left and then came back again. It was like a constant movement and motion. So she was kind of free to do what she wanted to do, and that's exactly what she did. And I think she's got herself one spectacular cabinet.
She told some legislators early on in the cabinet selection process that she was not going to look to the legislature for any cabinet officers. She has now named 2 assembly people. I hear she's going to name 2 more. I heard this today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You don't know? I do.
Could she not find people outside the legislature? Did she have to go ultimately into the legislature?
No, she did not have to go to the legislature. What happened was that the 2 legislators that she picked are stars. I mean, it was like cream rising to the top.
We're talking about Bob Shin for DEPE.
And we're talking about Harriet Durman for Department of Community Affairs. It was just like cream coming to the top. It was very obvious, as plain as the nose on your face. So she went for what she thought was the excellence, and she was right to do that.
All right, we'll see how that cabinet performs and how it fills out. There are a few seats open. Thank you for filling this seat for us, Hazel.
Thank you. My pleasure, as always.
Thank you. Well, the ball is proceeding. People are still arriving. There's an awful lot of traffic outside. It's hard to get in here, but a lot of people are here. This is Michael Aron at the ball. Let's go back to the Trenton studio. Kent and Steve.
All right, Michael, hope you have one.
Yes, you took my line,
Oh,
Steve.
sorry about that.
Enjoy yourself, Michael. Well, we have time for a couple of quick closing comments from our guest here in our NJN studios, Howard Green of the New Jersey Historical Society. The commission, I should say. It's now up to Mrs. Whitman to take the bull by the horns, if you will, once all of the festivities of today are put to rest, and tomorrow begin her day in office and begin her day leading this state.
Absolutely. I mean, I think nobody has missed the significance of she being the first woman to be governor of New Jersey, and that's something that was long overdue. Now we have our first woman governor, and I think Mrs. Whitman would like, and I'm pretty sure the people of the state of New Jersey feel that tomorrow she is Governor Whitman, and only Governor Whitman. And there was a lot of talk about consensus in this speech, and I think building consensus is one of the things she needs to do. but there will not be consensus on all issues. There are many issues on which the people of the state of New Jersey are deeply divided, and there are not going to be choices that everybody will like. She needs to make them. She showed some signs of being willing to make hard, firm, swift, decisive choices. The ball is in her court, so to speak. I think the people are behind her, and we will see.
All right, Howard Green, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate you being here. You know, Kent, they say that there are two tragedies in life. One is not getting what you want, and the other is getting what you want. And it's Christy Whitman's turn now as governor to take the ball and run with it, and obviously it's the playing out that'll make all the difference.
So we're going to take a break in our coverage for about an hour, and then we'll be back with a live edition of NJN News.
Our political coverage will go on through, though, at 9 with an NJN documentary, The Campaign Inside. It's an inside look into the campaign of Christy Whitman and a run for governor.
So we invite you to stay right here.
And we'll see you again at 10.
Mm-hmm.